She has been my nurse, and she has been my student. Please welcome Tasha Teets.
Hello. Thank you so much, Joelle. It's so hard to call her that because she was my teacher, like I say. But I'm so excited to be here today too. I'm pretty shy, so I'm going to do my best to speak, and we'll see how it goes. So I heard this is called the Spark Joy, so I'm thinking, how can we let people know that we can spark joy through visiting cemeteries? Because it doesn't really seem like the traditional method. So this is my family. I'm married to my husband about 10 years this year. We got a dog, Tia, and 3 daughters, Chloe, Claire, and Charlotte, 8, 7, and 2. So like I say, I've been wandering the cemeteries, just variously, no particular one, sometimes visiting famous graves or visiting my family, local ones, just whatnot. I kind of realized that history was important, and this is a good way to get really close to something historical. And I admired the monuments, the names. I've always been intrigued by names and dates and yes, history. I joined the Find a Grave app, if you guys have heard of that. It's a resource like on the internet. It probably became a website first and free to all to use. So I used it prior to becoming a member or volunteer, I guess. And then that was kind of when I escalated my interest. I briefly moved out of Aberdeen when I first had my kids, and my husband's family farm was near Britain area. So we were living out there about 3 years, and I was kind of like really bored with the kids, you know, obviously busy, but sometimes I was alone out there and there was no way to get them both like napping and calm down, and I really love history, so like I didn't know the area as well, and sometimes I spend time talking to his grandpa or whatever, and running the dogs. We go out exploring. I look for abandoned buildings, stop at a cemetery. It was a great place if the kids were napping to get out and check it out. And then through the Find a Grave app, I became aware that I could use my random interests to help others, I guess. So you can take photos, you can add GPS location to graves, you can, if the person isn't on there, like being it's a site where everyone is a volunteer, you do have to understand that some of the information may not be correct because it's entered like by someone like me. But so I go, and so the first thing I did that was really of interest was when we moved back to town was when like COVID hit and stuff, and wasn't a lot for me to do, and decided I was going to wander over here at the Sacred Heart Cemetery, and I noticed that most of these graves weren't posted to that website, so I just like started in one area, and I saw the nuns were out there. I worked at Mother Joseph Manor for 14 years and went to presentation, and so I guess I just felt a connection and interest there. So I first started with the nuns, and then I kept wandering section by section, and it took me a couple months, but some people were on there, but I think I added close to 2,000 people to the cemetery records on Find a Grave. And yes, there was like over 100 people that have since passed away, but some people update, and then, you know, it's a collaborative effort, so. Then I started that Graveyard Girl page because I just talked about it to my friends and family, and no one was really like as interested as me, I guess you could say. this was just like, it started as just a little way to keep it collected, and then it turned into a way to share with others, I guess. And to my astonishment, it now has like 8,600 followers almost 5 years later. And people are like walking up to me on the street, and little shy me is like, oh hi. Like, I like that, and it's really cool, but I never would have expected it, is the point here. So, and it's not me. That was not my intention, but it's like, the point was the shy me can get these connections. So I was reached out to by the Genealogy Society, the library, South Dakota Magazine, Aberdeen Magazine, Keloland News, multiple things that I'm like, can I do this? But yeah, I pushed the boundaries, and here we are. So I had to say yes to this, but I think this is my third speaking thing. Here we have one way that I found to spark joy was seeing this double rainbow as I was driving home the other night at Riverside. Had to stop there, and it's enhanced a little bit my Instagram because I wanted to show a little more of what it looked like in person. But that was the other night. So interesting facts, just to go here. Some cemeteries were first kind of in the early 1800s treated as some of the first public parks, and they really encouraged people to stop at them and hang out there, visiting their past relatives, respecting people, tending graves. Now it kind of seems like a taboo, maybe, to a lot of folks. A graveyard is actually the term for something that is attached to a church, while a cemetery is not. A graveyard could be both, but a cemetery could never be a graveyard. Aberdeen's first formal cemetery is the Riverside Cemetery down south of town, established July 1886. Other sites were used first as burial sites on the family farms, the outskirts of town, and whatnot. I think people were found when there was construction and things like that. I know they used someone's property, who I think was a mayor, as a burial site. And there were also reburials because I found newspaper articles as well as dates that are older than the original establishment date of the cemetery. So there are others like myself. This is one of the words they call for us, taphophile, a noun, one who has an excessive interest in cemeteries and graves, and a passion and enjoyment for touring cemeteries. They include photography, visiting famous graves, researching, reading epitaphs, and more. So there's a gal from Aberdeen, South Dakota. She was born here in like 1890. She left here. She had aspirations to become a famous portrait artist, and she ended up living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So she has the book that I have here. It's called Higher Than the Sky. It's her autobiography. And I first took a tour of the Riverside Cemetery, which it's really awesome that if you stop at the front, they have these tour brochures, and there's numbered stops where you can do your own little visits and learn about a couple people there. And so the last lady who took care of it, I believe her name was Kathy Alstott. She gave tours of the cemetery, and she told me about this book, or told us when we were on there. I was probably a child at this time, I don't recall. Anyway, I finally figured out what the book was. Frances Cranmer Greenman wrote this book, and I finally found it on like one of these older sites. She writes in here about older times in Aberdeen. She says, Sundays at grandmother's was always the same. Church, dinner, dishes, then the regular walk to the cemetery. I would gaze in awe at the graves of Auntie Pearl's blue babies, 4 tiny mounds side by side. She wrote the autobiography Higher Than the Sky in 1954. And then I found this photo of her grave, which is kind of hard to read, but she has really hard to read material of her grave. She died in 1981, buried in Minneapolis in the Lakewood Cemetery. But she also speaks in the book more about going to the graveyard, or the cemetery, I'm sorry. She talks about robbing the cemetery in Aberdeen on Memorial Day when she was about 10 years old. So that was like 1900. So we talk about this man named S.W. Nerrigan. He was an Aberdeen businessman. His wife was Olive Ollie Easton. She's of the Easton Castle family. I don't exactly know the relation at this time, but yeah, she's related to those guys and married into the family. She died young, and he erected a ornate grave for her in the cemetery that you'll notice pretty soon when you just kind of drive through the south older side there. We have two large granite ball monuments here. In the back, you can see James H. Kyle, and here we have the monument for the Nerrigans. Ollie's is on this side. It was raining that day. I don't have a better photo of this time. It mentions in there that she had wandered among the simple graves, and that, of course, there are the stark contrast between the simple haves and have-nots. Mentions this ornate plot surrounded by chains, and at the time there were voluptuous American beauty roses. She states that she climbed the chains, took 3 roses, and enjoyed them on her way home. Sniffing them, she'd put them in a vase and had them at home for days. And she said, my crime went unnoticed. She was kind of like a funny writer when I read the book. I didn't know how to take her very well, I guess. And here we are, and there's ways to spark joy at the cemetery that I found. So this is just a list, bullet points, and I go into more detail later here. Some ways to spark joy at the cemetery include nature, exercise, meditation, finding your ancestors if you're into genealogy, volunteering, such as like picking up trash. It can be simple as that. Find a grave, volunteering. And even if you want to get into more help, you could ask like a cemetery manager for permission to clean like headstones with proper training and approval and things like that. And I would maybe be really intrigued to help with veteran stones and child stones on the times when people are no longer around to help out. And so, other things to do, visiting famous graves. Although I will say I'm more into visiting people who are less famous, less known. Reading names and dates. I've always been intrigued by that, like finding the oldest date in the cemetery, or like I'm gravitating to the oldest stones, names that are not heard of in this day as commonly. And then like every time I travel, I decide recently that I'm gonna visit a new cemetery. So you will see even throughout the United States, a lot of different cultures when you travel. You can look for unique stones. Here's an example of a homemade stone with a lot of different pearly iridescent and then kind of a metal plate there. And there's a picture of me exercising. I was pregnant with my last kid. Like the last week of it, going out to Riverside, walking around. And then looking for unique stones, I did say that. We have one up there on display. Awareness of your mortality, which seems crazy, but you can gain an appreciation for your life looking around. And first of all, you're doing all these things, meditating, exercising, you're in nature, such as you are meant to be, I believe. But something about that is really spiritual to me. And yeah, it has helped me gain an appreciation for life, which not many have understood my perspective in that way. There's historical significance, especially when you're into the local history. And learning about those that rest there, some of the ways I do so is when you search Find a Grave, you can find photos, spouse, burial date. It just depends how hard someone went to update this person's information. I do not have an ancestry membership, but you can search some basic info. Sometimes you'll find a photo, sometimes you'll find a draft card, a death cert, sometimes. You'll find a telephone directory, so it tells you what they were, tells you where they lived. It's kind of interesting to learn if you're really connected to someone, because sometimes I find this connection beyond time. So here's some nature walks and intriguing things I found. Bird watching, even though I'm not gonna lie, I'm really scared of birds. But I've seen all kinds. We've seen owls, ducks, cardinals, blue jays. I've seen a nest with the eggs in there just right in the cemetery. And I've seen a baby, I don't know what it was, but it scared the devil out of me. And more. There were flowers and trees. There's been a whole, what did they say, the migration of monarch butterflies I seemed to capture one time through a cemetery, clinging to trees when my photos did not do justice, which is typical. I found dens of foxes, which you can see up on the top there. They live out by Riverside, somewhere out there. They tend to come around a lot, or I don't know, multiple litters, I guess, whatever they're called. Go for exercise, which meant walking is my exercise. Sometimes it's not productive out there because I stop and look around too much. And I'll grab a cup of coffee and bike. That's just things I like to do. Meditation, I never knew how important that was till recently. Just focusing on nothing. And solitude, I have learned that that's for me. Calm, you find that there. So here's some of the famous graves I visited and that I was able to find evidence of. So there we have Mount Moriah, Deadwood, and we have Wild Bill Hickok. Again, they have some pretty bad quality photos. They're digital camera photos from a long time ago. And then he's up to the right of the famous graves, Mount Moriah sign underneath. And on the left corner is Calamity Jane's grave. I always note birthday twins in mine. My birthday was yesterday, May 1, and she is my birthday twin. And then we have Buffalo Bill Cody to the right of her. To the right of that, we have the grave of the unknown soldier, the tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington. I was 20 years old, took a trip with my family, my grandmother there, and her husband, and then my whole family to go out there. That was really powerful and amazing to see. And the coolest thing to me was being able to see how they traveled the exact same markings every time with the rust markings from their boots. And then the top and bottom there on the right side are the old and new tomb of Washington, President Washington, which we also saw on that trip. Before I forget, in the middle there, we have the reburial of Sitting Bull, 1953 memorial out at Mobridge, South Dakota. Photo is 2018. And then on the right side, we have Charles Pod Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. First, a book series written by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and then the popular television series that we know and love. And then here, I love to visit my family graves. I'm super into genealogy. So So this is just a couple I could find. Up on the left, I discovered this man through a county history book that he was one of our really distant relatives. And people kind of were doubtful at first because there were two guys with the same name in the family. We did find that he was like a grandfather to that generation. And so yes, he is related to us, which I was able to verify by like that book. And some census records, some plat records, maps are helpful. Next door we have my grandma. Over there's grandma, which is down in Texas. Bottom left two photos are the three childhood brothers, one of which was not documented on our family history. Still learning more about those guys who all died during childhood, but I've been able to find them in the past couple of years, and the thrill I experienced was really crazy. Up top in the center is a family cemetery we go to quite often called Bethlehem. And there used to be a church. My grandparents were married there. They used to attend this church, but that was their original church. The Howard and Jean Westby were their names. And Grandma, her parents are out there, and then both sets of grandparents, and then we also have a Westby relative, so there's 3 branches. I love to go out there every single year around the time of my grandma's birthday. My great-grandma, I should say, sorry, she's the only great-grandma I ever knew, and it's like 15 minutes from Seachy Hollow. If you've ever been there, it's really amazing and cool to see that. So I go out there every year. It's a tradition I think it's been about 12 years. And I started by tending only my great-grandma's grave, leaving flowers. Now it's like a full venture. And last year I went with my cousin Stephanie, and we had so much fun. I had goosebumps even though it was 99 degrees out. And then down on the right side, we could see there's one of the Anderson relatives that I talk about, and then my kids. In the middle, they're visiting 2 other graves. The baby in the car seat, that's my 3rd daughter, visiting my great-grandma that I talked about. And then in the back is another, he's a Westby. He was one of the founders of the Cemetery Church, donated some land for a stable for that church. And I believe that's why he's buried right there. I don't know. Up top is my grandma's parents. And they're also in Texas, so I haven't seen them in 20 years. Gave them a big ol' hug. This is what we call another poem that's really interesting to me. This is how I feel. Dear Ancestor by Walter Butler Palmer. Your tombstone stands among the rest, neglected and alone. The name and date are chiseled out on polished marble stone. It reaches out to all who care. It is too late to mourn. You did not know that I exist. You died, and I was born. Yet each of us are cells of you in flesh and blood and bone. Our blood contracts and beats a pulse entirely not our own. Dear ancestor, the place you filled 100 years ago speaks out among the ones you've left who would have loved you so. I wonder how you lived and loved. I wonder if you knew that someday I would find this spot and come to visit you. So, another thing I was reading epitaphs are like inscriptions on gravestones. You'll find some really interesting and cool things. Some scripture, which I'm really getting into. I've been reading the Bible this past year, which has been extremely amazing. So here's one. It's very eerie. There's other variations. Pause, stranger, when you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you will be. So prepare for death and follow me. And it's a way to, just think about what's important. Don't rush through your life. Anything you may take from that. Volunteering, find a grave, and that's the logo for that company. picking up trash, as I mentioned, permission to clean stones with proper knowledge, tending the family graves. So these are the results from me cleaning one of those gravestones I discovered, which was hiding at that one cemetery that I've been to all the time, year after year. And I took my grandma over there, which is not even one of the people from our side of the family. She just wanted to hang out, which was great. And she termed herself Graveyard Granny, which I thought was lovely too. And so she witnessed my excitement over discovering that grave of this little boy, who is actually my great grandma that I knew, who's my dad's grandma. It was her mom's brother, and there's 2 other brothers that I discovered. But anyways, so that was the stone when I first saw it, and I'm like, could that be? Couldn't even hardly tell. And then, yeah, I can see quite a bit. This is like results after about a year. The product that I use is called D2 Biological Solution. You want to use like very no harm methods, I guess. And this one is one of the only approved gravestone cleaners, and I've only used this, so that's what I know, but it works over time. So I use water and soft bristle brush, and then yeah, it works over time. And with Memorial Day approaching, years ago I found this cartoon strip, and I believe it encompasses so much of also what I believe. I have a gravestone kit in my car for like, you never know what you might want to do or see or leave on someone's grave. So it shows like kind of things are getting out of control, need a little tending up there. Cut, brush, clip, brush, wash, trim, polish. You sure this is what you want to do on your day off? I have never been more sure. And that's really how I feel sometimes. I love Memorial Day. That was sometimes one of my favorite holidays lately, which is really strange. Cool gravestones I found. So there are so many portraits that I'll find and I'll be like, feel a connection to them. These 2 people are out at Riverside, so I've always felt a connection to them. They're both, you know, somewhat around my age. I guess now I have really surpassed Elsie's age. But Peter on the left was a soldier, and they both died. So I believe Elsie, 1918, she died of Spanish flu. She was a young mother, so I felt really connected to her when I kind of started wandering the graves during the pandemic. And I was the same type of person, the same age. And then we got Peter, who was a soldier dying in 1922. And honestly, weirdly enough, I've had 2 people reach out to me that were related to both of them just because I posted on them so much, because I just feel like I know them. And it's like, oh cool. Anyway, then I find this really cool log gravestone. I was thrilled. Looks like a little cabin. It's down in Colorado. We have up top, it's in Sioux Falls, a gigantic, like, crystallized petrified wood thing. And I think I found that man was a doctor. And then down here, I think this was at Bath. There's a zinky, they're called, white zinc monuments. They were only made a short time. And honestly, I wish I could have one. They're my favorite type. And really crisp and long-lasting. Oh, sorry. Up top, we also have a QR code, which is one of the only ones I've seen. There is like that you could scan them and you'll find info about their life or photos, so it's kind of cool. But I don't know, I'm kind of one of those people who just feels like that's going to be obsolete someday. Anyway, but it's a cool way to do it. And then we have the real. There's a lot of these like fake looking tree monuments, which are just something to behold. This one is taller than I found in South Dakota. And he doesn't even have his name on it, but through my site, I was friends with the man who is on Sioux Falls, and he's the caretaker, works there. He was able to tell me who it is. So I actually added it to find a grave. He wasn't even on it. And then we got down in Stratford, there's a petrified wood monument for a man named Alfred Schley. This is one of the coolest ones, which deserved its own, and it's out at Sacred Heart. They're so cute, you just want to be like, oh. Joseph and Odella Beagler is what I want to say their names are. And all over the site, there's stones that just are really cool to see, and their photo. Love the photo ones. So, in conclusion, although sometimes it is seen as a negative or morbid, gloomy or scary hobby, there are many ways to have fun and spark joy by visiting cemeteries. I sure hope that I showed you some of those today, and let me know if you have any questions afterwards.